Welcome to Where Are They Now?, where we reach into the archives of Lenape, Shawnee, Cherokee, and Seneca high schools and invite selected alumni to share their memories and fill us in on their career paths after commencement. Since Lenape's first graduating class in 1961, Shawnee's in 1972, Cherokee's in 1978, and Seneca's in 2005, over 77,000 individuals have received diplomas from these four schools. Join us now for another Lenape District alumni interview on Where Are They Now?
Hello and welcome to another edition of Where Are They Now? I'm Mark Sonsini, a 1996 graduate of Cherokee High School, and today we'll be talking with a Seneca alumnus from the class of 2008. He is a digital media arts instructor residing in Dayton, Ohio. I'd like to welcome Nick DeSanctis to the show. Nick, welcome.
Mark, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I'm really excited to hear about your career since Seneca, but before we get there, let's take a few minutes and go back and look at your time at Seneca. You grew up in Chemung, correct?
Correct.
And any siblings or family members that went to Seneca with you?
My younger brother, Jay, was 2 years behind me, so he graduated 2 years after I did. And while I was off having my fun in Virginia, he went to the Air Force Academy, graduated from there, and spends his time now down in Mississippi training the next generation of pilots.
Terrific. All right, so let's talk about your time at Seneca, some activities you were involved in. You did lacrosse all 4 years. That was big for you, I know. Tell me about that.
There was something about just the sport itself. My dad grew up playing, and when we first, I guess growing up, it wasn't as big as it is now. So I didn't really have a chance to play until I got to high school. But once I actually got to put the helmet and gloves on, and it was more than just having a catch with my dad in the backyard, I just fell in love with it. I'll be pretty open that I wasn't a great player, but I used that to be a really good lacrosse broadcaster. That came later. I started reffing, coaching. I found a way to stay involved with it for a long, long time. But yeah, it started with Coach Davidson way back in the spring of, oh gosh, I guess it was '05.
I think lacrosse was fairly new to the district at that time, correct?
It was. It was new to the district, and obviously going to Seneca, I think I was the second class to go all the way through. So my freshman year was the first year that we had a varsity program. So it was kind of, we all got to learn a lot of the nuances of the game at about the same time.
Obviously boys lacrosse. Girls lacrosse had been around for a while, but boys lacrosse was new to the district, so that was exciting. Aside from sports, you were involved in technology. You were in the TSA, or Technology Students Association.
I was. Mr. Pittner and Mr. Conowitz had kind of set that up for us. And a couple guys I knew were getting involved, and it just kind of became a thing. And I see it now as a high school teacher too. Like, if you get your friends involved, you're going to be involved too. So
sure.
Yeah, we kind of ran with that and had a good time. We actually won a state championship my junior year in structural engineering, because I thought I was going to go be an engineer one day. Missed the mark on that a little bit, but yeah, we had a lot of fun with TSA and the state competitions every year.
And along those lines as well, you were involved with Golden Eagle Television, which, unlike the engineering part of it, this part had a big impact on your future career. Tell me about that.
So my undergrad and graduate degrees are not in the video field or the graphic design field or anything. I learned the vast majority of my baseline knowledge in the TV and broadcasting classes at Seneca, and then working on the production truck with LDTV Sports. I learned more from Kirk Seeley and Matt Conowitz than I ever thought I could ever learn. Those guys just kept opening door after door for me and trusting me with more and more things. And I got such a good foundation of knowledge from those guys. I had so much fun with all the things we did, whether it was the morning show or producing a 30-minute show that was going to air on TV. I got so much from those two guys. I'll be forever grateful for every opportunity that I got through GETV.
And you mentioned Mr. Seeley with TV broadcasting. A couple other teachers that I know had a big impact on you were Mr. Manna for English and Mr. Watson for science. Tell me about them.
Mr. Manna might be one of the top teachers I've ever had, and I don't think I realized it until later on. I just enjoyed going to his class, and I think Mr. Watson, I always liked physics. I think that was part of why I enjoyed the engineering stuff. And Watson was always so approachable. He made things fun. Man, I loved how he just had music coming on. He'd always have something for us to read that was, it was current. It was relevant to high school kids. And as silly as it sounds, Mano was like, "Hey guys, your vocab needs work." So he was giving us vocab tests. He was pretty open that they were like third and fourth grade vocab tests, but he wanted us to get better with it, and that was something that stuck with me. When I made my transition into teaching, coming in on the career tech side, doing digital media arts and broadcasting and video, don't put you through a 4-year program to get your teaching license. You go through kind of a different abbreviated program. So I really had to lean on kind of what I knew worked. So I kept finding myself doing things the way Mr. Seeley did them, the way Mr. Watson did them, the way Mr. Manna did them, because it worked for those guys. And I feel like to this point, their methods have worked really well for me too. So someone's doing something right, and I have a feeling it's guys.
And you talked about one of those things that they did was sort of make you feel included and part of something bigger than just what you're learning or what's in a textbook.
Oh yeah, they were all about the school community. I think you saw that with Mr. Seeley. Just the way his class is set up, I'm able to do something really similar here, where we can't just live in a corner of the building. We can do stuff that bridges all through our school, all through our community. That's what we try and do. And with Manna and Watson, even if you didn't have friends in the class, you felt like you had friends in the class. Something so simple as someone different is picking the music that we're starting class with today.
Right.
I know Mr. Watson and I used to talk hockey all the time anyway, or we talk about going out in the woods and getting our trucks muddy. It was just, there was always something that they would do that made you feel included in what they were doing.
That's a sign of a good teacher. One of the other special memories that you had was homeroom and making kind of friends or making connections that you may not have made otherwise. It's funny, you're probably the second or third person now that mentioned that, and it doesn't seem like homeroom would be something that a lot of people would remember about high school, but clearly it is.
Well, I guess if you're just sitting there for your 15, 20 minutes and trying to get caught up on homework you should have done the night before, it's not going to be super memorable. But for us, we were producing the morning show for a school of, 1,300 kids every single morning. You're starting your day with a high pressure, high stress situation, and you have to work together, period. And it's something like live event. You can't go it alone. We need everybody to be on the same page. We need 2 or 3 camera people. We need 2 hosts. We need a floor manager. We need a TD. Everybody to know what's going on.
Right.
And that was something I found later in my career. It was one of the things I loved about my career was just the relationships that you build when you're working in those situations with people. You start to predict what they're going to do. One of my really good friends in high school was our TD while I was directing a bunch. So I got to the point where he could call the show because he knew what was coming next. We've done it enough. He knew how I roll. Yeah, we did a lot of cool stuff with that morning show, and really, truly, that helped launch me kind of into the stratosphere that was my career.
And live production, and a lot of people maybe don't know, but live production is so much different from recording something and then going back later. When you're doing a live show or sports, which obviously we'll get into a lot, it's a completely different animal because there's no retakes. You get one shot at it and that's it.
There is no second chance. And
right.
You have to make the most with what you have at any given second. Something that's going to go wrong, it's just a matter of what it is and how you're going to react to it.
Yeah, and some people thrive on that and like it, and some people don't. And clearly you're one that did like it and thrives on it, so we'll talk about that in a moment. So you graduate from Seneca and you're headed down to Roanoke College in Virginia to pursue a degree in sports management. Were you thinking, broadcasting or anything at that time, or?
Oh boy, I was thinking physics and engineering.
Okay.
And that was what I went to school for. That was what I packed my bags up for. When I got to Roanoke is a smaller school, about 2,000 kids. I think they're up to like 2,300 now. But you had to do a certain number of hours for on-campus activities, community service. They wanted to get you involved right off the bat. And I was like, well, how am I going to do this? And for whatever reason, I was sitting bored in my dorm room scrolling through, and I found the men's soccer media guide. I was always a sports guy, so I started flipping through and saw the play-by-play broadcaster's name. So I looked him up and found that it was a student, reached out to him and said, hey, I have some background in this that I got in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Can I help? I need my hours. He goes, yeah, come on. And him and I called a couple of volleyball games together, and I helped him with their streaming setup, and the sports information director goes, hey, how about we pay you? I said, well, that sounds good. I need money. And,
sure.
Yeah, after 2 years, physics was not working out. That's probably the best way to say that. It was not working out. Sports was going good. I love the campus. I love the community down there. I love the people. So I decided to slide over to sport management, which, having worked in the athletic department at that point for 2 years, I had a pretty good grasp on a lot of things but definitely made my degree process a little bit easier. But yeah, we got lost on the way to calculus, ended up with a degree in sport management, and a whole lot of awesome experience.
Yeah. And you mentioned you did some announcing. You did, I think you announced one game when you were at Seneca for LDTV Sports, right?
I did. It was the Seneca Shawnee game my junior year. And I remember Mr. Seeley came up to me and said, "Hey, our play-by-play guy's absent today." And I was like, "Well, I have to go stand on the sidelines and not play." He goes, "Do you want me to reach out to coach?" I was like, "Yeah, let me talk to him first." So I went to talk to Coach Davidson and was like, "Look, you know I'm not going to play. I know I'm not going to play. At least they'll have somebody on there that knows what's going on. I mean, I know everybody's name, so we got that going for us." And he's like, "Yeah, go for it." And Mr. Seeley got me all set up, and at that point, I still had my really long hair too. I think that was one of the things. Once I saw that on TV, I was like, I might want to think about, getting rid of some of that.
In that mix, we have a nice young attack line. Let's hope they can put the ball in the back of the net. We have a good game for us today.
So did you think, this is something I could continue to do in the future, maybe?
I was thinking about it. I wasn't quite sure. I didn't know. And then when I got to Roanoke, at the time, I mean, they still are a top tier Division III lacrosse program. So when I come in and go, hey, I can call games. I've called lacrosse games before. All of a sudden, that gets people interested now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started with our fall sports and made it to lacrosse season. And the spring of my freshman year, we were the #1 team in the nation for, I believe, 3 straight weeks before we made the NCAA tournament.
Now you mentioned you started doing some work and eventually got hired through the athletic department for broadcasting and streaming events there at Roanoke. What kind of impact did your experience at Seneca and with LDTV Sports, how much did that help you and kind of get you prepared to jump right in there and do that?
I want to make this abundantly clear. I don't have the career I have, the experience I have, the cool things I have done without LDTV Sports and without GETV. There's just no way. So being able to get on the call and do a game when I was in high school, I worked a bunch of games running camera, behind the scenes as well. You kind of got a feel for how things went. And it was something that once I saw that behind the scenes, I was just hooked on it. So the chance to work in sports, work in events, and call games, yeah, you learn as you go. And there was some equipment that we had at Roanoke that we didn't necessarily have in high school or at LDTV, but you had the basics, and once you have the basics, you can kind of fill in the gaps. But yeah, the experience that I got just in calling a game there before the LDTV Sports truck, Mr. Seeley and Mr. Conowitz would do like a couple games a year anyway. I had helped out with those too, so I had a baseline of experience that a lot of people didn't get.
Yeah.
So when I showed up going on, I if nothing else, I kind of knew how the puzzle kind of came together.
And during your time there as well, you also interned with the Burlington Royals Appalachian League baseball team and did some radio broadcasts for them as well, right? I
did. It was probably the most fun I never want to have again. But minor league baseball is really a special animal. That was a fun summer. I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot. Learned a lot about calling games. Learned a lot about being a professional. Learned a lot about sport management too. Since I sat right next to the general manager pretty much every day and had a knack for asking questions, and he was open enough to answer them.
Excellent. That's how you learn. Okay, so you graduated Roanoke in 2012, and your first main job in the industry, you're coordinator of broadcasting and multimedia for West Point Athletic Department. So tell us about that.
What a time. There's something really special about the service academies. My father's a retired lieutenant colonel. My mother was in the military. As I mentioned, my brother went to the Air Force Academy. He was at the academy when I got hired at West Point, which only started a minor sibling rivalry.
Yeah, I bet.
There's something so unbelievably special about that place. From the chance to be up close and personal with Division I athletes. You're on the sideline at a really historic college football venue of Mikey Stadium. I've always been a big hockey fan, so I got to get up close and personal with the hockey team, work with those guys and the coaching staffs. Got to do some play-by-play, got to do some behind the scenes, got to do some creative. Really had the chance to do absolutely anything and everything. It set me up really, really well to continue on my career path. But while I was there, the experiences, I still think about it. I was watching the Army-Navy game this weekend, just thinking back to everything.
And you worked one of those in Philadelphia, right? The Army-Navy game?
I did. It was in Philly, and I mean, obviously, growing up as close as we were to Philadelphia, you always saw it in the news. I had a distant cousin who played football for Navy, so I had pretty much got in the habit of watching the game every year.
Okay.
And it got to a point where it was just part of my routine. So to be on the sideline working that game, um, it was cold. It was, oh my gosh, it was raining, and then the temp dropped. So you're standing there just watching the
Yeah.
snow fall. The guys are playing their hearts out. There's something special about that game. And I think anybody that works at the academies at any point is gonna see that and feel that. There's just something special about it. But yeah, as far as top experiences in my career goes, standing on the sideline with a DSLR camera shooting highlights at the Army Navy game is definitely up there.
Excellent. And were you shooting? I was going to ask you what your role was for that game. Were you shooting for highlights? Were you just shooting stills? What were you doing?
So for that game, I was shooting highlights. Army and Navy have an agreement with social media. So we were providing some footage just for West Point as well as the Army Navy game social media accounts.
Okay.
So I was there to capture the Corps of Cadets, shoot highlights, just kind of run around getting whatever we could muster. I mean, TV pulls out all the stops. CBS is great. They had every angle of everything for that game, so we knew we'd get the highlights. Truth be told, that year there weren't a lot of highlights for us anyway, so my job was easier or harder, I guess, depending on how you look at it.
Right. So what is that the same sort of thing you were doing a lot at West Point for, outside of the Army Navy game, or what kind of jobs were you doing?
We kind of broke it up by sports.
Okay.
So for men's basketball, for football, for baseball, I was more filming creative content. For the soccers of the world, the volleyballs, I was doing a lot of on-air. Hockey, I was kind of doing both.
Okay.
And then lacrosse, they had me strictly play-by-play for radio for lacrosse. About
Okay.
how that worked out. For basketball games, they had just really gotten hard into the streaming game with the Patriot League Network. So I had experience with the TriCaster, so I got to use the TriCaster and push our content out. But yeah, that job had me do a little bit of everything. But football game days for me were mainly creative content, press conferences,
Okay.
and then get ready for your next Olympic sporting event because you normally had something that night, something the next day. And you have 32, 33 varsity sports at that point. You're always going.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to cover. What kind of crew were you as far as numbers? What kind of crew were you a part of?
Me.
Yeah.
There was
One
a full-time staff member above me, and then me. We had some help from IT that would help us set up the TriCaster, run some cables. We would bring some people in to do play-by-play if we were getting stretched too thin.
Okay.
There was a day, there was a snowstorm coming in, and we had to move some events around. So my day started at 11 a.m. with a lacrosse game that I was play-by-play for. Then I had to go into the gym and film men's basketball game, followed by a women's basketball game. They started at, I think, like 1:30 and then like 4.
Okay.
And then grabbed a couple Mountain Dews and some concession snacks and then headed to the hockey rink because I had to do play-by-play for the hockey game that night.
Wow.
I think I slept until about 1 p.m. the next day. By the time I got done getting highlights and everything cut up, get all your post-game stuff wrapped up. Yeah, it was always a long day. And with the service academies, you can't, they don't normally let the freshmen go off campus. So if you want to see your parents have to come to you. And the only real way to get everybody on campus is to come to a football game.
Right.
So those home football games, all the other sports teams would schedule games around as well. So you normally had something Thursday night, Friday night, football game Saturday. With our contract with CBS, we kicked at noon, which means you're trying to get 25,000 people through 3 entrances to an Army base. So I'm up at 5 to get through the gate, hopefully by 6, and I'll have breakfast somewhere at the stadium, hopefully, so I can just steal a hot dog from the tailgate. And then you're going to work the football game. We're going to do the press conference. And then we probably have a soccer or volleyball game that night. So I'm going to have to set up for that. And then you're going to have a soccer or volleyball game on Sunday. And then at some point you're going to sleep. At some point you're going to do laundry. You might want to go grocery shopping because Monday morning you're back in the office ready to go.
Wow. That's a packed weekend.
It was an adventure. It was cool. It was really, really neat. I'm super thankful for my time there. But I am glad that part of my career is kind of in my rearview mirror.
I hear you. All right, so from there you move on and you go into the University of Dayton for their athletic department, where you're the assistant director of video services. A lot of similar stuff that you're doing, or are you more in a administrative role there? Tell me about what you're doing at Dayton.
I was definitely a boots on the ground operator in that role.
Okay.
It was a nice jump for my career. It was really a good step. Obviously, I still live in Dayton, all things considered. So the goal when UD hired me was that we want to set up a streaming program. And I said, well, I did that at Roanoke. I had a big part in it when I was at West Point. I can help you do that. So when I got there, it was about, hey, we need to figure out how we're going to get events to stream. And we did that. We got the basic gear together. We hired a student crew. We started training a student crew. From there, we won a couple games in the NCAA tournament, which if you know anything about March Madness, you know, that means money coming our way. So we got the money to build a production truck. And the AD and I sat down, and he said, look, what do you need? Here's what we're trying to get to. How can we get there? So we crunched some numbers, did some math, and I spent my first summer at UD, outside UD Arena, legendary basketball home, with my toolbox, and we built a production truck from scratch, much like the LDTV sports truck back in the day. And we definitely took some inspiration from that. Other builds that we saw with ESPN3 and a local news station.
Sure.
And we put together our own production truck. And we used that to then send games to TV, to ESPN3, all over the place. So for the most part, if the game could be streamed, I was streaming it. If it was a basketball game, I was probably up in the control room helping with the video boards for our sellout after sellout after sellout basketball crowds. And if it was a football game, TV picked it up. I was on the sideline filming highlights. So life in sports, there's kind of that pattern where you're always going. But
Yeah.
my job at UD, I did creative. I ran some video board shows. But it was very heavy behind the scenes broadcast. I think I called like 1 or 2 games early when we really just needed somebody.
Yeah.
But after that, I was in the truck with my headset on and all my notes, coordinating 6 or 7 different cameras, a couple channels of replay, a bunch of mics down in the field to send that show to normally ESPN3, ESPN Plus, or one of our local TV partners.
And are these all student directors and camera people at that point, and you're just kind of taking care of, the broadcast and streaming part of it?
We got to that point. That was definitely the goal. It took a couple years.
Okay.
But we figured out some different ways to train our students. Also figured out that you can bribe them pretty easily with pizza and a free t-shirt, which definitely helped. But we started off with just them on camera, and then we slowly integrated them into some other things. We actually formalized a class while I was there. So I got to teach a class at the University of Dayton on sports
cool.
video production. And we were able to get our student workers in that. So it kind of gave them more of a background. After 2.5 years, we were at a point where I would sit in the back row and direct and produce, but we would have somebody on the phone with our TV partner or master control for ESPN Plus. We'd have the kids punching the buttons, but for the most part, we kept staff producing and directing. But we had college kids that were not majoring in this stuff, that we had trained on replay and graphics and camera and audio and everything else. And while I was at UD, I got my master's in educational leadership, and I think that kind of helped me basically figure out how to build a curriculum for these guys and how to get them up to speed quickly, because the kids show up in August and your first sporting events are mid to late August for soccer.
Yeah.
So we need the kids ready to go as quickly as possible. And we oftentimes felt like the college coach, where do you want to start your star senior, or do you want your promising freshman to get some reps, and
Right.
figure out who can do what and how we can use them across the platforms.
And I'm sure some of those kids who weren't majoring in it at the time, I'm sure that experience probably changed some of their minds, and maybe they went into this and figured out that they wanted to do that as a career and not something else that they may have come in, with their sights on.
We did have a couple kids. We had a couple kids who switched as their time went on. They also were able to look at me and my boss at the time and realize that neither of us had degrees in this either. We had a work ethic, we had experience, we had a willingness to learn, and that can take you pretty far too. So in Dayton, we have a single A baseball team, and for being a city, Dayton's still not that big. I mean, a lot of people know a lot of people, especially in the broadcast and video industry. So it got to the point where we were getting our students hired to work games for the Dayton Dragons, which worked out great for everybody involved. The Dragons got labor. The kids got experience. They got to work with different directors, work with different equipment, work with different crews to see how things go. And after summer there, they come back to us with a better understanding of how things go. So we had a pretty good pipeline going there for a while. And I had freelanced with Dragons too, and it was kind of a really cool moment for me to sit down at the bench and look to my left, and it's the kids that I train that are sitting next to me now to do something that's even bigger than we've been doing before.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. And also during your time there, you got to host some NCAA First Four games. That must have been quite an experience. Tell me about that.
Oh my gosh, there are a few things cooler. I was never much of a basketball fan. I'll definitely lead with that, but there was something about the NCAA tournament coming to town. There's just something so cool. It was always an exciting time. It was also a time where you knew you weren't going to see your family for a while because you're going to be busy. The NCAA for the First Four would not build the content for us, so we were in charge of building it. We also did not know what teams were coming until Sunday night. And the schedule for the tournament means that open practices for the first group of teams are going to be Monday afternoon. So we would, everything worked up to Selection Sunday. The floor would be going down that weekend. We'd have all the content built and ready to go that we could. And Selection Sunday, we had a big conference room at the arena, and we called it the War Room. And there would just be phones everywhere. All the TVs are turned to the selection show. In the weeks leading up to it, we would look at kind of the rankings to see who we thought might be coming to the First Four, and start checking the drives and the FTP sites to see if they had their stuff in. So as soon as a name flashed up, we either have the stuff or we need the stuff. So we're picking up the phone, coordinating all that. But when you have a spotlight burning a hole in the roof of your arena, and just the national attention that comes with that, you have to put your best foot forward. And we talked before about kind of the fun with live events, and video board shows have that too. It's a little different than broadcast, but you still have some of that live event fun. Man, that was fun. It was crazy. It was a crazy week because every year our teams were always in it too. So you'd work the First Four, and then one year we got in a van and drove through the night to get to St. Louis to link up with the guys team. Sometimes you're getting on a flight. There were different points where they had to charter a small plane just to get the people to venues that needed to get there, depending on where we were playing. But oh man, there's just something so cool about playing basketball in March.
And I think a lot of people probably don't realize, millions obviously have watched, a March Madness game or have been in an arena, during a game, and don't really realize all of the content or the graphics or everything they're seeing and consuming, just goes by and don't realize all the work and the prep that has to go into that, and to do that on such a tight schedule. Like you said, it must have just been crazy. Oh,
and by the way, it's got to be right. Like, you can't just throw stuff up there.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to proof player names, and because you have to do a player card for everybody, because you don't know who's going to play. You don't know how things are going to go. So you have to have everything. Every single button has to work. And I was at UD when we started the arena renovation project, where we went from just a couple little video boards to a full center hung board and ribbon boards and everything else. So now one button that we're setting up is going to fire video on 10 to 12 different surfaces. So all of them have to be right. There's millions of dollars of corporate sponsorship that are riding on all of this getting right. You don't want to be the one that screws it up.
That's right. All right, so you leave University of Dayton for a little while, and then, or you leave Ohio for a little while, I should say, and you head down to Appalachian State University, and you're the director of broadcasting and video production there. A lot of the same type of stuff, I'm guessing?
I kind of moved up a little bit in a sense. I went from less of the boots on the ground kind of operator to more of a hybrid administrator operator role.
Okay.
And they were in a similar position where they were trying to build a program. They were trying to get a student crew together. So I was very busy with the different things that I was responsible for. I didn't realize administrators had that many meetings. And in my job now, I joke that it's just a thing administrators do, is just schedule more meetings. Which I'm sure my admin likes too much, but they see the humor in it. Going from meeting to meeting, and then, oh, by the way, I need to get the graphics set up for the broadcast tonight.
Right.
So we did some really cool things. I had an awesome crew at Appalachian State. The relationships I built there in the year I was there, they were something special. It was the kind of thing where when you're going through those stressful situations all the time, and you're always kind of battling for different things, You learn to trust people, and
Yeah.
we all trusted each other really well there. I'm really proud of the things that we did there. Right before I left to come back to Ohio, we were named a finalist in the College Sports Media Awards for the best broadcast done by a student crew. And that was a student crew that we had built only 3 months prior
Wow.
to that game that we won on. So it was the same kind of thing we did at UD, where we had a staff member who was basically producing and directing, but we had students doing stats and graphics and replay and audio and shading, and AD and cameras and POC. Having the kids step up in the way that they did was super cool. I'm still in touch with a lot of the kids that have worked for me, and I think that probably is the reason why I'm a teacher deep down. But yeah, we did some cool stuff at App State. When I was down there, we won the first Sun Belt Championship. So to be able to direct a video board show where you have 15,000 kids jumping over the railing to storm the field, there's just something so cool about that you just don't get in a lot of other jobs.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, so you spent years doing this, exciting on-the-fly sports work, and now you're a digital media arts instructor for high school. So, how did we get there? What made you, feel like it was time to make that career change?
Working in sports is hard. It's fun and it's really, really cool. But contrary to popular belief, the money's not very good. And the hours are crazy. You don't get a lot of time off. There's not a lot of time for hobbies or family. And the people that do it for a long time do find ways to balance all that out. But I felt like I just need a break. I need to take a step back, evaluate what I wanted with my life, and just see what was next for me. So my wife and I had actually had a trip planned to go back out to Wyoming, which is just a thing we like to do. And as we were on our drive there, I was trying to figure out what I wanted next. And we looked at in college athletics, and I talked to some schools and some teams and some networks, and a school district about 40 minutes from our house was looking for a teacher, and my wife is a high school chemistry teacher. So there was something kind of appealing about having our schedules line up, about not working 80 hours a week, maybe only working 184 days in a year. So I decided to give it a go. I said, when I worked with the college kids, that was the best part of my job, always. There's something fun about the first four, winning championships and stuff, but when a kid gets it, whether it's a high school kid or a college kid, when you see them get it, when they, run replay and they know what they're doing, when they, put together a really cool piece of creative content with the tools you taught them, there was just a warm, fuzzy feeling for me that was just something special. So it was like, well, what if I just make that my job? What if I just do that? How does that look? How does that work? So I decided to kind of step off that ledge and trust in the process that fortune favors the brave, and here we are.
And you were, maybe you knew it, maybe you didn't know it, but you were sort of training for this a large portion of that time when you're building, these student crews and you're building these programs, and you're training for your teaching program. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you knew it at the time or not, but I'm sure it came in useful when you do actually make that change.
It really did. I mean, I kind of had an idea then of how to teach. I mean, my mom always worked in the schools. My dad taught me how to weld when I was in like 8th grade. So he had some patience and some pedagogy skill to him. But I think I always knew this was an option for me. I don't know that I ever saw it high school. I think I always wanted to kind of teach college. But when I was at UD, getting my master's in education really helped me. It gave me some knowledge that a lot of teachers coming in, I mentioned earlier, coming in on the career tech side, it's kind of a whole different animal. There's some certification stuff you go through, and there's still some training stuff. Like, you're still licensed, and you need to make sure you know how to work with kids. But for me, a lot of that I already had. I had already done this. Yeah, maybe instead of 14 to 18-year-olds, they were 18 to 22. But I have a track record of getting kids skills, and frankly, getting kids jobs. So the switch over to high school, yeah, my wife likes to bug me that she always knew that I would be a teacher. I was like, I don't know that you always knew. But yeah, she's been a part of this too. Being married to a teacher means that all summer as I was sitting in the office, she was texting me from the pool. And that gets old after a while. You kind of just want to be at the pool too.
Speaking of the pool and off time, you and Kaylani, first of all, tell us how you guys met.
We actually met in undergrad. She was a cute blonde girl, and I was like, oh, hey. And I don't know, we struck up kind of a friendship and realized we liked each other. And when I got the job at Dayton, she came on out. She found a teaching job out here, and I guess we got married a couple years later, bought our house, and just trying our best to live happily ever after.
Well, it sounds like you're doing pretty well so far. You got 2 dogs, Ellie and Coda, and you guys like to travel a lot. Tell us about some of your recent adventures.
Oh gosh, I think a couple weeks ago we were out in the New River Gorge, out in West Virginia at the national park there, just outside of Fayetteville, West Virginia. Had a blast out there, hiking, sitting around the campfire. A couple years ago, I guess we've gone to like Wyoming and the Rockies, I guess 3 times the last 6 years.
Okay.
We ended up going on our honeymoon, which was a fluke. We weren't saving for a honeymoon, and my best man was like, that's not okay. So he got all my friends involved, and they gave us a check and said, here, you're going on a honeymoon now. So we decided, let's go to Wyoming and Jackson and just see what's out there.
Awesome.
I kind of fell in love with it. So every other summer for a little while, we've been able to make that trip. We bought our first camper this summer.
Okay.
So we're looking forward to seeing the next bit of adventures that come with that.
In the summer of 2021, you saw 12 national parks in a 3-week span.
We did. We left
That's pretty
and
amazing.
headed west, and we pretty much just blocked off about a month and headed up north and all the way out to Glacier National Park, and then headed south to Moab and kind of started our loop back from there. And, I mean, there's so many cool parts of the country to see. It was neat just to see all the little towns. We try and avoid the big cities and some of the big tourist destinations.
Okay.
So we were doing parts of the parks that people don't normally go to. We were staying in small towns and Airbnbs and Verbos and just other little places we could find just to kind of experience different parts of the country and check out some of the cool national parks since they are really, really special places.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list, is to go see some of the national parks. If there's one that I should go to, which one should it be?
I've heard people say that like Yosemite and Sequoia and some of those are top tier. I haven't made it out to them yet.
Okay.
I like Glacier. I like Teton. I like the mountains. I belong in the mountains, I think. Just cool hikes in Teton and some really cool views. Glacier National Park is just, it's truly a treasure. We used the 4-wheel drive of my truck to go up to some of the lakes that were kind of off to the side where most of the people weren't. So we got to see a different part of it. But at the same time, getting down into Moab, Utah and hiking through Canyonlands and going through arches to see some of that. I think for the most part, you can't go wrong. I will say we have one national park in Ohio, and we decided to go up and take a trip to that. And we were hiking around that, hearing the traffic from the interstate. And went, well, this isn't Yellowstone. Everything's a national park for its own reason, but yeah, there's so many cool ones. There's so many cool places. My summer project this year, because we didn't travel as much because we bought the camper and gas prices were high, so we decided to just stay closer to home. I put together just one Google Maps, all the national parks, every state's, I guess the top 10 state parks in every state, all the National Park Service sites, the top 50 small towns to see, the privately owned cool nature stuff to do. I have this like Google map going with like 600 different places on it, so that we can just try and plot whatever adventure we want. We'll throw the dogs in the truck, hook the camper up, and just roll out.
That's awesome. That was my next question, was going to be where are you looking to go next, or is there one place you want to go to? But it sounds like you've got plenty to keep you busy for a while. So
we got all sorts of options. We got the whole map. I think we really want to get down to southern Colorado and explore that. I've also reconnected with my distant relatives in Italy, so I'm like, at some point we're going to have to go see them. My friend has a cabin up in Ontario, up on the lake I want to go to.
All right.
It's a long list at this point, but I just hope I have the money and the energy to keep traveling as long as I can.
Sounds good. And you know, obviously we talked a lot about sports, obviously being a huge part of your life. From your time in New Jersey, you're a big Flyers fan. You're still hanging in there with the Flyers, and you like to go see them when they come to town every so often.
Yeah, being in Dayton, it's kind of nice. We're small. We don't have as much as some of the big cities do, but we're an hour from Columbus. We're an hour from Cincinnati. So when the Flyers play the Blue Jackets, which is normally 2 or 3 times on the road,
Right.
we try and head up to Columbus. We were up there for the last one. Decided to get up close and personal, see the boys from the second row, and have a good time with it. I still have my Philly roots. I don't think people out in the Midwest appreciate those Philly roots as much, but it hasn't deterred me yet.
Anything else you missed from the Philly area, New Jersey area back home?
Oh gosh, the food.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I was talking to a buddy earlier about chicken cutlets, and the Midwesterners just don't quite understand. It's hard
Really?
to find good pizza. I don't know. As weird as it is, the Midwest attitude is kind of odd. I mean, I went to college down south, lived in North Carolina a couple different times, but there's something about like the Philly, New Jersey, New York area where people are just really direct. And I don't think I truly realized it until I got to Ohio. I got told a couple times early on that I needed to tone it down a little bit because people are just they're straight up with you. And the Midwest, it's just a little different.
A little softer. Okay.
Yeah, they're a little softer, a little more mild mannered, a little quieter probably too than some of us are and what we're used to.
Well, Nick, congratulations on a greatly successful career since graduating Seneca. It was great catching up with you. We're really proud of you, and we wish you continued success and best of luck in the future. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, guys. I love the opportunities that you guys keep presenting the students with. I mean, I think what you guys are doing is helping to make more people like me and just keep following us out there.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. And that's all for this episode of Where Are They Now? For other Lenape District alumnus interviews, check us out online at youtube.com/Lenape District TV. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.